4 without a doubt was the most insane Archon Quest ever. So much lore, so much happened. Dottore tried to recruit the Traveler, Columbina returns with the true Trilune authority, Sandrone is killed at the hands of the Doctor, and finally Dottore gets eliminated. This video is going to address the elephant in the room. Is Dottore really gone? Short answer, probably not. After all, Irminsul isn't just going to burn itself. But that alone isn't the only reason to doubt his death. If you played through the end of Act 8 of the Archon Quest, you may have noticed something strange. The ending screen appears twice, once on the moon with Columbina, and once again after Varka writes his letter to Mondstadt. The second time, however, it's glitchy. This is strange. Is this simply the world being a bit unstable and shaky after recent events, or is this deliberately the work of Dottore? Right before the glitch, Varka looks up at the sky and says, "I think everyone's going to sleep well tonight." Immediately after that line, the ending screen appears and glitches. To me, this feels very intentional, almost like a message that peaceful nights aren't coming just yet. The visual distortion itself has patterns around the edges, the same motifs seen in Dottore's design and his creations, patterns associated with both him and Irminsul. The glitching itself even resembles the false sky a bit, almost as if it's telling us that it's an illusion, meant to conceal the truth. Just like the false sky hides reality behind an illusion, this ending may be doing the same. A false ending. A smokescreen meant to convince us that everything is over, when it really isn't. But then why does the ending screen appear twice? It's almost as if the world itself forgot that it had already shown us the conclusion. Similar to how Scaramouche deleted himself from history and everyone forgot about his existence. Could this be the result of Irminsul tampering? During the quest, we watch Dottore implant false memories into some of the inhabitants of Nausea Town, so at the very least we know that he can mess with the ley lines. So tampering with Irminsul itself is definitely not out of the question. At the very end of the quest, right as Wanderer was preparing to head back to Sumeru, Wanderer mentions that the Dendro Archon would quote-unquote need help dealing with the chaos Dottore left in his wake. Not just from this incident, but from everything he did in the past. This is strange. It's understandable for there to be chaos from this incident since Dottore posed a worldwide threat. But why the past? A lot of time has passed since the Sumeru incident. There should have been enough time to address whatever he did back then. Did something from back then really go unnoticed by Nahida, and did whatever happened in nod-krai bring it to the surface? It seems to me that the true extent of Dottore's experiment wasn't necessarily limited to nod-krai as we saw. For all we know, he was in nod-krai, but he could have also not been in nod-krai. Sumeru specifically houses Irminsul, and Dottore has the ability to mess with time and space, so this past chaos in Sumeru could be related to Irminsul. So how would Dottore survive? The logical conclusion most of us would come to is that Dottore has more segments. Dottore created his segments because, in his own words, observing the world lacks the dimension of time. So he created segments of himself at different ages to preserve his perspectives on the world. Different versions of himself existing simultaneously would naturally reach different conclusions from the same observation. It's like bringing different versions of himself from the past into the present to aid in his work. His segments were never created to be backups. They were his way of overcoming time itself. When Nahida asks him to destroy his segments back in Sumeru, he describes it as plucking out the eyes he's placed in the dimension of time. But those segments are now gone. Nahida confirms this, and we watched his different consciousnesses vanish. He stated that it's only a matter of time until he found better perspectives. We can't be sure whether this means he'll find a new perspective to make a segment out of, or find a better way to overcome time altogether. And the nod-krai experiment may have been exactly that solution. During the brief window in which Dottore experienced divinity, he gained powers tied to the Trilune authority, life, death, time, and space. And in his words, he saw new possibilities. Nature suppressed, authority exiled, and souls controlled. Souls are an important part of this. See, his clones have a problem. In order to preserve his past perspectives, each clone was made into a distinct individual, so it's not exactly one mind controlling the actions of all of them. This leads to endless arguments and disagreements within them. So instead of relying on a whole living clone, why not use an empty one? He can transfer his consciousness, will, soul, experimental data, whatever it is, out of his body in the moment it mattered, and into another vessel. After all, this is something we saw a lot during the quest, the separation of the body and soul. Columbina separated her divinity, authority, and body. Dottore's experiments in the energy field had the souls of living people inside animals, so who's to say he didn't do the same thing to himself? After all, Dottore, despite his arrogance, is an extraordinarily intelligent man. One thing he isn't is reckless. And with the sheer level of power that he had, albeit for a short while, I doubt he would squander it playing with souls inside the energy fields while letting us take our sweet time to prepare to face him. It's hard to imagine there not being some other scheme invisible to us in the background. Back in Sumeru, Dottore told us, as a scholar, he respects all possibilities. This has always been his principal and essential trait as an experimenter. If that truly defines how he operates, then he must have accounted for every possible scenario. Success, failure, and the extraneous, like Columbina's return, the Fatui turning against him, even a hypothetical intervention of the Shades. He would have even considered scenarios where no one could stop him, just as much as the possibility that he successfully recruits the Traveler. And with all of that in mind, Dottore should have known that he wouldn't be able to carry on indefinitely. Sooner or later, becoming a false god and blatantly breaking the rules of the world would force a confrontation with the Shades and the heavenly principles. Did he truly believe that if that happened, he could defeat them and become the supreme entity of Teyvat? So looking at it this way, perhaps he knew his divinity was never meant to be permanent in the first place. Moving on, the next question becomes, why did he hold back during the fight? If Dottore truly wanted us out of the equation, it would have been trivial for someone with his abilities. Instead, he protects the Traveler during the battle, and deliberately ensures that we do not escape nod-krai and are forced to fight. We were never an obstacle to begin with. We were part of the experiment from the very beginning. Also, notice how he conveniently cut open the sky in just the right spot, revealing the frost moon. To me at least, there is something about this that feels staged. Dottore also knew exactly what we were doing by stalling for Sandrone, and yet he still made the fight longer than it really had to. If he ended up killing us, revival was always one of his abilities. He also let us take all the time we needed before the final battle. He states that days had passed in doing so. Even visual symbolism of the place we fight in, it's like we were always in the palm of his hand. So is how everything turned out really a happy coincidence, or was this carefully staged by Dottore? Another thing to notice is how the events of this were nearly identical to that of the Sumeru incident. The subject becomes a false god, but are defeated by the power of true divinity. If this was an experiment, what is he trying to learn from this? The outcome was the same in both this one and the Sumeru incident. Did he really not learn anything from the past? The moment Columbina showed up with the true Trilune authority, he should have known that this wasn't a winning fight. Putting that aside, let's talk about the Fatui for a moment. In the God's Limits teaser, Pierro asks, what is the price of killing a god? Now that a false god is dead, is this so-called price what's setting up the stage for Irminsul's destruction? So considering all of this, his so-called death was never the end. His divinity was never meant to be permanent either. It was setting up the next phase of the experiment, the burning of Irminsul. By tampering with Irminsul or time itself may have been the very groundwork for what's gonna happen next. So let me know your thoughts and theories in the comments, and consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Thank you for watching.